My sister found this old knife in the cellar at the farmhouse, and we're guessing it is my dad's old knife. He's a lot like me. He likes to put his initial A on things that he does or did. I've removed the majority of the rust from the blade already with my trusty old crud cutter, but there's still quite a bit on there, and kind of a unique thing. I'm not sure what's under this leather, but it's obviously that he used some type of thin leathering leather glue to replace what was there before. I don't know if, well, yeah, I think I'm going to take this off and see what's underneath. I've got some leather that's pretty much the same color. I think I want to keep it close to what he did with it, so I might just get some more leather and put it on there after I get the knife and the guard and the butt of the knife all cleaned up. So I got the majority of the rust off the blade using the rust converter, but there's still some pretty, I don't know if it's deep or just built up corrosion pieces or areas on the blade. So I think the next step, I'm going to hit it with some hand sanding and see how that turns out. Well, even 100 grit doesn't really seem to be cutting it on these thicker areas of, I guess, a corrosive buildup. So, I'll pull out a couple of files and see if that helps a bit. We'll definitely cut through the cut a little bit, and I'll sand it afterwards. Seems to be doing the trick. I hope this pitting doesn't go very deep. I like to take off as little as possible. I'm not going to do a mirror finish or anything. I think I'm just going to get it to maybe 400 grit, and then I'll either blue it or coffee etch it. Probably blue it just to keep it from rusting again. I've got a worn belt here on the 1x30. I'm going to try hitting it with that for a little bit. So I got the blade about where I want it on the 1x30. there's still some pockets in there. As I mentioned, I'll try to get out. Anybody else hear Chewbacca talking? I think I'll take care of the rest with hand sanding. So I'll flip her over and do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to hit her with some 220 grit and see where that puts us for a finish, and what's happening with these I guess you could call them pits. I would imagine they're not just surface, but we'll see what the 220 does and go from there. Okay, I got the majority of the sanding done on that blade. I had to pull the Dremel tool out with that small sanding wheel to get those bigger pits. At least I'm down to metal there. And the smaller ones, I dug at a bit. Let me see if I can get the right view on that you can see that I'm down to the metal on those bigger ones. But those smaller ones I picked out with an X-Acto knife and a small wire brush, and I'll probably sand it down a little bit more after I get done messing with the handle, and then blue it. But for now, I'm gonna see what's going on in this handle here. All right, I'm gonna start by trying to cut this leather piece off at the glue there. I'm going to do everything I can to save it, just in case I either need to or want to reuse it instead of a piece of leather that I have. So we'll see if we can get into there. I'll see if we can do it without me cutting myself. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to salvage that. That leather is leather or full leather. And it seems like leather. It's pretty dry. I've got some pretty good corrosion going on there too. The wood is actually not in bad shape. I don't think you'll be able to read it, but the inscription says Western, Boulder, Colorado. Patent number 13574 something. So I think I'm going to start by taking this handle off. Maybe I can salvage that wood yet. Keep it as original as possible. Well, it looks like this has been worked on a bit. We've got either brass or copper. There's some sections, yeah, it's probably just brass. Discolor a little bit from corrosion. We've got the brass screw and nut on the back. Then we've got a steel pin and nut on this side. I'll have to look up that Western and see if they're still in business, or when they were in business, what kind of knives they made. Maybe even find out exactly how old this knife is. Alright, so I was able to get that screw drilled out, back side of the nut and screw. Got this piece of the handle off. It had some good glue in there also, some type of rubbery glue. Now I'll get this other side off. Put some rust converter on there and let it sit for a little while. Well, I had the rust converter on for a little over an hour. Just got done cleaning it off. Still a bit of rust left on there that needs to be wire brushed and sanded off. So I got rid of most of the rust on the spine of the knife there. So I've got some sanding to do on the guard and on this aluminum butt. I'll sand this a little bit too. Obviously all of this is going to be covered up under the handle, so it doesn't have to look good, just get all the rust off. Except for this guard, I'll probably polish that at least to, I don't know, 1,000 grit, 2,000, make it nice and polished and shiny. So I'll just keep sanding away at this and catch up with you when I get her looking halfway decent. Up to 4,000. There she is after a run through the buffer. I think that's where I'll leave it and move on to polishing up the brass guard. So I'm slowly making my way through the guard here. I'll keep going here and probably cut a lot of this out, since I know that everyone loves watching hand sanding about as much as I love doing it. Okay, I'm just going to start on 4,000 on the guard, and then same as the but I'll run it through the buffer after I finish up with this. Alright, done in the buffer for the guard. I'll go back and do a little bit of work on the blade. So I did some research on this knife per the markings on here, where it says Western, Boulder, Colorado, COLO, and then the patent number 1967479. I think I got that right. But I looked up different Western knives and the patent number, and that patent is actually for this split tang. And the majority of these knives have spacers on the front and the rear, and some of them have like 1/8 inch leather, round leather for the handle, and normally all of those spacers in that leather, which are kind of like in an H pattern, would be slid into the tang prior to having the pommel put on. You can kind of see the pins here, and let me see if I can get that into focus. You can kind of see the different shade of the pins, and I really don't want to mess this up by trying to take those pins out. Some of the models also had a bone handle on here, and I don't know if I will try to redo some wood like what was on there. It's obvious. My dad or someone my dad got the knife from had redone the handle. My guess is that it was probably the leather type, and somebody didn't take very good care of it, because the bone ones seem to last quite some time. I'm going to look and see if I have some good antler pieces that will work as scales for this. And you can see that I blued the blade, and most of the blades, well, all of the blades from the factory are just polished steel. I do intend on taking either steel wool or some high grit sandpaper and bringing this back to silver, but it's good that I blued it, because some of the real tiny pits that'll help protect it from rust. So I'm going to polish this up and then start working on something to use as scales. Whether or not I'll have spacers, I'm not sure. So we'll get to that. Okay, so I sanded off the bluing. I just did quick sanding with 1500 grit, and then another with 2500. There's still a lot of the low spots and pits that have bluing in, which is good. Gives the knife a little bit of character, and it's going to protect it against rust in those areas. So now onto the handle. Right, for the handle scales, I found this tip of an elk antler in my stash. It's got a little bit of a curve, but I can get a nice flat out of there, and a nice flat out of this area. So I'll get those cut out or cut off and shaped just enough to be able to put them onto the tang and see how it looks. Alright, that took a little bit longer than I thought, mainly because I screwed up a couple of times. Got the lengths a little bit wrong. Well, mainly I screwed up once on one set. But now I'll have scales for another time. So I ended up with these two pieces here after cutting and sanding on the grinder belt. And I don't know what the deal was with these particular antlers. They weren't just the normal awful smell. They're like death with a tang, if that makes any sense. My garage and shop smells like crap right now. Angie's gonna love me when she gets home. You can probably hear in the background I got the fan on. That smell is gonna be in my nose for probably the next 2 days, even though I was wearing a mask. But we got some success. So I got the left side front, right side front, so this is what it's gonna look like there. So I think I will do 2 pins, 2 brass pins, and probably after I drill those holes, I'll do a little bit of sanding and smoothing out of these 2 pieces, and then I'll get ready to glue them up. Alright, so I got the holes drilled and pins made. Just doing a test fit right now. Everything looks pretty good. So as far as the sheath for this knife goes, I can't reuse this one. I'd already torn this piece of leather off because of all the dirt and grit and rust that's on the inside of this sheath here. So I'm going to make a new one, but I think I'm going to incorporate this piece of leather that my dad carved his initial A into it, and probably glue and sew that onto one side of the sheath. Well, we got her out of the clamp, and I'll do some hand sanding here before I take the tape off the rest. All right, we got her fairly well cleaned up. I kind of like that white, but I get the feeling it would get stained pretty quickly. So I'm going to take my trusty espresso wood finish and give it a little bit of a brown tint. Well, even though I didn't keep the wood, or the leather wrap for that matter, I think Dad would be happy with having this antler handle. I think this will turn out pretty nice. It won't be bad for, how many years old? 73 to 90. Well, the manufacture period for this model and stamp that's on the blade is 1935 to 1950. So 73 years to 88 years old. Did I do that math right? I think so. Well, there we have it. A 1935 to 1950 Western hunting knife. Restored for the second time, once by my dad, once by me.